Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks again for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe in the links below. Click, 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 click. And then tap that alert button. Ding. If you possibly could, I'd be grateful. So today's episode is actually a fun one. We're doing episode 2 of the speed build series. So we're converting the old eco lifestyle pack house, the old mill, into the old mill suburban chase. So this house is going to be more stately and like a craftsman vibe that then kind of reuses the central square piece. So again, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you guys go out and do something magical. Stay proud, and let's go ahead and dive in now. Okay, so first things first, I immediately just start looking at the house, and I'm like, this is all facing not the preferred way I'd like. It was more of like a shotgun style design, where it's just long and skinny. And I felt like it needed more of a defined, like very prominent entrance and floor plate, that's just very stately and pronounced. So I immediately just start chunking out sort of the initial design and the front of the house, because I felt like that could still be like the original sort of the design and sort of the reuse portion of the overall design of the house. So then I just go in and do these symmetrical additions to the side, and thought maybe this could be what they added back in the day when they maybe had some money or something to improve the house. And so, I just start adding in these extra columns to pull in the design of sort of the old craftsman style. But at first I was thinking craftsman is in like something around the 20s, the roaring 20s sort of craftsman style, which had a lot more brick and rich wood tones. But then I ended up reserving myself on that and pulling back on that design a little bit and doing like more of an old world craftsman style. So something that could have been built in the maybe 17 or 1800s, where they wouldn't have used brick so much because it would have been expensive and a lot more labor intensive to put and pour on site. So they would have not really used much concrete either, because again, you would have had to dig a big hole, dump a ton of concrete mixture in it, stir it up, and then use it on your house. And that's how they make plaster too. So you may find like leaf fragments or twig fragments in it. So I was thinking, to kind of go with a design like that. But at first, for me, it's all about getting the initial design out of my brain into the Sims. So I, go in and just sort of start putting in chunks and things like that together, and pieces. They're called chunks, but like just areas basically of the house that I start putting in, just so that I can start visualizing what I am seeing in my brain in the Sims. And for this house, I really wanted to have really, really pronounced roof lines and really strong detail with the trim and the overall pieces that make up the house. So I kind of started playing with the pitches of the roof and that kind of thing. And I've been using the hip roofs to really accentuate gable roofs a lot more recently. Usually I would just use like the gable or just the hip and that kind of stuff. But now I've been kind of making it more realistic looking by using both the hip and the gable roof. And the hip is just the one that just doesn't have the gable on the front. It's just like the kind of flat on the sides. And so then I'm just kind of starting to get my additions put together a little bit and the plan and kind of see how all that shapes out together. And so I spend a little bit of time on that so that I can do the 3-layer sort of roof sequence, as I would call it. And then I had a little bit of trouble on it actually finding where the roof needed to be on my little bump out for the roof. And I did those because I felt like that would be another eco element, where back in the old days, they wouldn't have had air conditioning. So you would have had a house that needed some additional shade. So they would put like little bump out and extra overhangs and eaves of your house so that you had even more shade from the sunlight and the heat of the summer. And this is kind of what I was talking about how I sometimes will just put up things to see what it looks like or to get my idea of the design down, or at least where walls and windows would go. And for this, I was like, no, I don't want the old French style or that old Southern style. I want it to have more of like the Midwest or New England vibe. And so then I looked at these windows and I'm like, these are too Chicago. They're too like industrial and too new, honestly, from the perspective that I had for this design. So then I was like, I just threw up a couple of those windows. I was like, ooh, I really like that idea of this more of like, you know, the stately federal window, as I would call it, or like a colonial window. So I ended up going with that for the design. And then that's when I start replacing my columns, because then at that point it started pushing my design even more in a certain direction that you're starting to see come together. But it's all about creating that very old world craftsman look that's almost colonial, but more of like a DIY colonial. And then for the other room on the other side, I thought it'd be fun to play on the old mill concept a little bit and give it that really giant, like, half circle sort of windows, you know, so that it kind of has that rounded sort of design. Maybe that's where, you know, that side of the house could have been where the wheel was. And so then I'm just kind of looking around a little bit and seeing how things mesh and where my symmetry and asymmetry is, because for this house I wanted to have a lot of symmetrical appearance. So I went with that. And then this is where I start adding in all that chunky trim to kind of play a little bit into the chunky upper level trim and at the peak of those windows. And then this is where I then chunk out the middle as well, and the addition to really kind of give it 3 separate compartments, basically, so that it could have maybe have been added to later on in history. And then I take out the kitchen, but kind of put it back to where it was a little bit, because I think it'd be important to walk in and see the kitchen, because for me and in design, it's all about how far your eye can travel, not how far your feet can walk. So basically that means that you're creating an illusion of space and value in square footage by seeming like you're maximizing every inch. And, you know, giving your eyes the ability to just look around and see all this space. Even if it's not a lot of space, it just looks like a lot because there's not a lot of obstruction and things to look through or around. And then I just kind of start playing with the front entrance a little bit more, because I just want to make sure it was like that really grand, stately, strong entrance that the previous house just did not have. And it lacked a lot of character. So I wanted to kind of pop that in here too. So that's where I'm coming up with the last kind of tweaks on the roof line, and to get everything really good and cleaned up there. I really like doing the dual entrances when I can, because I feel like that, again, just creates the really stately look. And then it's kind of symmetrical because that other door is in between and above. And now we're just, you know, cleaning up the last bit of the gables. And so I want to do the double gable for that center, again, to just give it that extra bit of trim and pop. So we've got that, and we go through and just keep adding the elements in. And then I start working on the bump out colors, and I really like using alternate colors and textures for the bump outs and the features that I want to accentuate. And then another thing I also do is I just kind of like in real life, I'll throw like a swatch up on the wall and just kind of look at it all day, so to speak, and think like, how does this look in the lighting, or how is this going to work in the space? And that's when I ended up settling on the high white for the extra pieces of the house, and then there in the back, and then also towards like some of the sides, because I wanted it to kind of have differential on which side you were looking at. So one of the sides has the brick, so it might have been added on to first, and then they maybe have added in that second section then at the end of the house's sort of construction lifespan. And then I kind of went really liberal with the windows at first and started adding a ton of them in. But then what I'll do is then go back and start removing them and positioning them depending on how it comes together. So, like if it's blocking a wall or a window or being too much, then I just start toning it down over time. And then this is another thing I really like doing is, you'll see here, but I picked 3 different swatches for the grass of different opacities, so that again, it kind of has that texture and feel of being realistic with kind of utilizing the limits the Sims has in terms of grass, because it doesn't have a real strong texture. So by giving it different opacity and variations in the grass color, then I feel like it makes it look a little more realistic and kind of create that illusion of texture. So I go with the dark green forest, light green forest, and that sort of mossy bright green to kind of add some extra flair and pop. And then same with the plants that you see here that I'm putting in now. I go and kind of create different sizes and lengths of the plant so that it looks like you have some saplings and some younger trees and some older trees, because in real life you're not going to see the exact same size tree everywhere. So I just really like kind of playing with that extra bit of ability in the Sims to be able to kind of shrink those down. And then I was trying to go with an accent window, but then over time I decided, like this one I kept, but then this one I ended up going to basically the original design that the other windows have, because I felt like that it's the back of the house and it doesn't have to have that really giant window. And so now I'm doing the estate lighting. So I threw it into dark mode for evening mode, and now I'm just kind of starting to pop in all my lighting just to check it out. And this is why we were in having the Sim rather than going in the actual build mode from the main screen. I go and add the Sim in and make sure the Sims are there, because then it just gives them the ability to automatically turn the lights on without having you to do extra cheats or whatever to make that happen. So the Sims are there. And then I ended up putting the kitchen back in the center, because again, I felt like it was important that you'd walk in and see the kitchen and just the sheer amount of space that it has. And then I'm really picky about where my appliances go in relativity to the windows. And then I really like making sure that I create that perfect triangle, from your dishwasher, your stove to your refrigerator, so that there's not a lot of travel distance, because in real life, that's the way you'd want it to be. And then it creates efficiency. Those chairs are some of my favorite. Those stools, I love them. And I just am a fool for putting mirrors in front of either a window over a sink or putting a mirror in front of a sink. And so now I did the inlay, because I felt like these are historic floors. You're not going to want to mess your historic floors up with wet, muddy shoes. Like, that's just a no-no. And I have 120-year-old floors in my house. And so it would kill me to be able to see them water damaged. So I think that it's important to have some sort of inlay and a rug, or at least a rug there, like a really thick one. So now I'm just kind of getting in my dining room area and thinking about what direction I want to go with it. So I again kind of pull from the Craftsman Style idea with the bar, and then we ran out of money, of course. I had forgot to add that in initially, and of course I knew it was going to be more than that. But in real life, I think that this house, the value and cost of it, $270,000 simoleons, I think it's about what it would be about what it is in real life here in the Midwest. You'd probably find this house on the market for $279 or so. And then I wanted to go in and make a really nice fitness center, because I feel like these people are probably eco and they're probably fitness junkies. So I added in the ability of them to have a whole at-home fitness facility. And then I didn't want to cut off any of the view again, because it's all about how far your eyes can travel. So I didn't want to cut off the staircase and then the view to the kitchen. So I made sure that you could really walk underneath it and see through it. So that's why I went with the modern one, even though sometimes I probably would go with the kind of correlating dark staircase there for that. And so then I start chunking out my bedrooms and bathrooms and things like that. And then you always want to try and minimize the amount of hallways you have. And if you do have hallways, to make them interior hallways so that you can maximize the amount of window kind of usage for your rooms. And so, I was like, oh, how are they going to get there? Because you obviously don't want them to walk through a bathroom to get to a bedroom, or a bedroom to get to a bedroom, because then that's awkward, especially if they're woohooing. And so then I just chunk out those bedrooms and bathrooms there. And sometimes you'll see me like take and put in a random bed and just kind of float it in between to make sure that I have enough squares to accommodate like the side tables, the bed, dresser, maybe. But I mean, they're not really necessary. Like back in the old days in Sims 1, you had to have a dresser to be able to make them change. But now obviously they can just change basically out of thin air. So now we have like the decor, and I don't do a lot of clutter because the Sims already come with baggages of clutter as it is. It seems like with every pack and every update, they seem to accumulate more clutter, whether it's bills, homework, college work, books, papers, like whatever it is. They seem to have lots of it, research, just all kinds of different things. And so then I ended up settling on a fireplace. Now I'm carving out my distinct areas of like living and visiting and that kind of stuff. And I didn't do like a library in the office. So I thought, that kind of having, I didn't leave enough space for that. So I thought about doing like a little reading nook area there off the front, because there was a lot of space off the front door in that sort of parlor area that just didn't have a lot of direction until, I kind of put that in. So once you add a rug and some chairs and stuff, then you could kind of start defining a space, especially then if you put that bookshelf there, then now it's like a little reading nook. And so here's our office. We have like just different things going in. I generally don't use the chess table unless it really has a purpose. But back in like the old days, like I said, you could only really gain logic from playing chess or a couple other things like studying and reading and that kind of thing. But now it's neat how much you can get from that. And then I had a chance to use a vase, and then I made another little painting nook area. So if you wanted to paint each other, you could, because I just wanted to give it a really strong ability to be self-reliant with this house, not maybe necessarily off the grid, just more self-reliant, self-sufficient. So the solar panels are there, but I didn't put the rain collector in because I feel like they wouldn't mind that necessarily. And we don't have a water shortage here in the Midwest or on the East Coast. So then I was able to fit in the bakery or the cupcake machine, which I thought was really fun because again, it's all about making them self-reliant. And then later on, I like add the insect like little hutch thing, and I add in the candle making machine, table, and all of that different stuff. And for me, it's all about going around and just finding all the dark spots and plugging in those holes with either pendant lighting or those can lights. So the can lights, I just go down a couple bumps with the bracket key to shrink them up. So then you can fit more into a space and kind of tuck them into little corners and stuff like that. But then it feels more real life because generally like the new LED ones, like the ones I have, they're only 4 inches around, but they put out even more light than what a traditional can light does. But then they don't get hot, like physically hot. So then they're less likely to catch fire, obviously, and that kind of stuff. And then they're a lot more energy efficient, of course, too. So then it's okay to have like several and not like feel like you're, a huge power muncher. And so now I'm just finishing out my bathroom. So what I do is I go and pick all my tubs at the same time and all of the toilets at the same time. So then you can avoid doing the constant shuffle and the dance with, picking out the different things for each room. So it's more like an assembly line for me, like I said, with doing each of the toilets, each of the tubs, each of the things, because sometimes I don't have a lot of time to play The Sims. So that's kind of a good way to efficiently play The Sims, is just by, picking all your toilets at the same time. And then you can also make sure that things don't match that you don't want to match, because sometimes you may end up forgetting what theme you picked. So this time, you can easily just say, oh yeah, that's a dark theme, or that's a light theme, or that's a fruity theme, as I call it, which is like super colorful and bright and funky, or more of a whimsical theme, or eco, or wellness, like as I would call, which is like just a bright, clean room that has like really high white kind of tile and that kind of stuff. And when I say high white, it just means it has a tad bit of blue in it. So when the light hits it, it looks more like a pure white, especially with LED lights. It's really neat to be able to do that. Okay, and so now I'm getting on my solar panels. And in real life, you obviously wouldn't see them from the front of the house. They tend to be on the back of the house. So I designed that. And then for a second, I just wasn't sure exactly which area I would put them. And then I did save the original bedroom from the original house and just kind of like, you know, shrunk it down a little bit. And then I popped in the other ones. And then this Murphy bed was a little bit of a challenge for me because I felt like it belonged in the space at first. But then I decided against it. Oh yeah, and then we have the DJ like mixing area too to give you another self-sufficiency piece. And then I end up taking out the Murphy bed here in a moment because it's just not really needed when I could use something else. And then I end up putting the flower arranging area in instead and kind of, you know, shifting around the room a tad bit more to give it a little bit more open space. And then that's when I then tuck in that little cove area I put in our flower arranging table because they can make like 6,000 simoleons on a flower arrangement, which is way more than most paintings I've ever seen go for. Generally, my paintings for like a masterpiece are like 2 or 3, maybe even 5. But I've seen like my master flower arranger do even more. And then I also realized that I totally missed doing a laundry room. So I kind of chunked out a little space from that bedroom up there to incorporate a small, efficient laundry room there on the second floor, which is kind of a lot of people's ideal living circumstance anyway. They like being able to have the laundry on the second floor so they don't have to take down all their clothes and everything like a flight or 2 flights of stairs. Like in my life, I have it in the basement, but my bedrooms are on the second level. So all of that just goes down the laundry chute, which I have, which is fantastic. But I haven't put in a pulley system yet, so I don't have a way to actually easily get it up the stairs. So someday I'm probably going to end up doing like a dumbwaiter or a pulley in it too, so that I have a way to hoist up a basket or something like that. And then I'm just kind of getting the last bit of the bedroom designs together. And this is where I was speaking about before, but we have the accent walls that I like to do behind some of the beds to kind of give it an even bigger headboard feel. And I tend to kind of do the floors first, but then I do the walls later on once I design on my furniture, because I like building the furniture, like picking the furniture and then kind of doing design around that, because there's a lot less furniture options. And then some of the furniture will end up clashing with some of the wall options. So that's why I end up picking like the furniture first, because I like it more. And then I'll pick that and then throw the wall color on. But what'll get me to that style is the floor. So that's why I do the flooring first. And then I then do the lighting around my furniture pieces because of the constraints and limits. So now we're just kind of doing the last little bit around and looking at all the house. And then I realized that I need the outside and just a little like quaint area to grill out and stuff, and to kind of give you that extra entry. So now we're just gonna go ahead and peek inside a little bit. So here's our kitchen and kind of what it looks like. And then the dining area. And then our office. And then our fitness area. And then we go upstairs and just kind of look around at the seating area a little bit here. And then the bathrooms. And then from here, I kind of pivot around a little bit more just to double check and look at everything to make sure it all looks good. And then I spin around again just to give you one last little hey rah and appearance from the house and what you can see. And it's actually available on the gallery now, so you guys can download it. It's Old Mill Suburban Chase. And thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in. I hope you have a great day and go out and do something magical. And stay proud, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you.